I'm David Meredith, CEO of Everbridge. I am honored to host this edition of our podcast, which serves as the latest extension of our successful Everbridge Executive Speaker Series, where we featured many world leaders, including Presidents George W. Bush and Bill Clinton, former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, General Colin Powell, healthcare experts such as Dr. Anthony Fauci, Sanjay Gupta, and Scott Gottlieb, and C-level business leaders, including Sir Richard Branson, Josh Harris, who co-founded Apollo Global Management and co-owns the NBA's Philadelphia 76ers, as well as discussions with board and C-level business executives from Major League Baseball, Goldman Sachs, Moderna, the Coca-Cola Company, Salesforce.com, Volkswagen, and many others. We developed this speaker series to share best practices and insights on the confluence between leadership, technology, and resilience, both at the personal and organizational level. I feel honored to welcome our legendary guest today, William Shatner. Mr. Shatner has cultivated a career spanning over 60 years as an award-winning actor, director, producer, writer, recording artist, and horseman. He is one of Hollywood's most recognizable figures and a major philanthropist. Listing his accomplishments in television, film, and stage alone would take up our allotted time. So let's jump into the interview. Mr. Shatner, welcome.
Thank you.
We met once before a few years ago after you spoke at the Tobin Center in San Antonio, where I was on the board of directors. You sold out the theater and the audience was completely enraptured by your presence and storytelling, and we're really excited to talk to you again today, so thank you.
Pleasure.
So I wanted to start with just kind of, if you look at your career span more than 6 decades, you've been famously dubbed the comeback kid by the media for your continued success as an award-winning actor, director, producer, author, recording artist, among many other endeavors. At Everbridge, we're using our technology to help leaders from all types of organizations to maintain resilience in the face of critical events that threaten them. So we were interested to get your perspectives based on your successful career. What are some of the lessons you've learned about staying resilient and how people and organizations can do the same?
Well, first of all, I'm working from the premise that I know nothing. I've got a new talk show on the air, going on the air in a week or two, which is entitled I Don't Understand. And it's everything I don't understand, which is everything I don't understand. I mean, I don't understand anything. But what comes to mind when you mentioned a problem and resilience and what do you do, I, along with a couple of other people, designed and built, I didn't build it, we farmed it out, of course, a motorcycle, a really futuristic motorcycle. And I decided, hey, why don't we drive that motorcycle from Chicago to Los Angeles? And we introduced it to the press, and I hadn't seen it before I got in it, and I got in it, and it didn't work. We had 150 people at press, and the motorcycle wouldn't go. So we adjourned, and we went back to a boardroom, and 14, 15 of us sat there. What are we going to do? Do we just say it's a bust and we're not going to do it? No, we couldn't. So, and I'm filming this as a documentary, and I'm thinking of the documentary that I've put together. I directed and we've edited, and I'm thinking of that round table that we were all sitting at, and I, as the leader, so-called leader, director of the film, and my idea, and I said, what do we do? I assessed everybody around the table. I needed to know what everybody thought. And after I heard everybody thought, somehow there germinated an idea that came from me. Why don't we rent me a motorcycle immediately, put this one in a cart, in a truck, ship it to every place that we were going to stop, but I would still ride across the continent on a motorcycle, which is what we did. So we had this roundtable discussion. I assessed everybody, got everybody's facts and figures, had an inspiration, and we went on that. Now, that inspiration could have come from anybody, as long as I recognized that that was the solution. And that was one episode in my life of dealing with a critical situation and wondering not having any idea what to do and devising a methodology.
Well, I love that example because so often in business and in life, things don't go according to plan. And that's really the essence of resilience. What happens? How do you handle that? And just kind of go through it, around it, figure out a way, as you did in that particular case, in a collaborative way.
What we all know, to one degree or another, that nothing works out the way you plan it. What was it? Mike, the heavyweight champion, said, "You're going with the plan in the ring, and the moment you get hit in the face, the plan falls apart. The moment you start something, the plans that you had are immediately what happens in real life after your plan is made is sometimes."
Yeah, that's a great quote. Everyone has a plan till they're punched in the face. Actually, I wasn't going to ask you about this, but did I see you on TV with a Mike Tyson tattoo on your?
Mike Tyson. So I've been around Mike for a while now, and that is something he said. You have a battle plan, and you get hit in the face, and everything. And that's the truth for anything. It's one thing to start your business, start your day, and it's going according to plan. That's great. There's nothing new going on there. But the moment the phone doesn't work, the moment somebody comes in with a call with an emergency, all your plans are out the window. And now you need to be resilient. And it's that resilience that makes the leader.
That's excellent. Thank you. I also wasn't going to ask you about this, so I'm actually curious. You mentioned your new show. So could you just share, what are some of the things that you don't know about that you're going to profile? Because in 90 years, you know a lot of stuff. So I'm curious, what happened?
No. I got to tell it's the other way around. In 90 years, you learn you don't know anything. And the other part, if you're able to come to the other truth, is nobody else does either. So you've got to approach everybody like, oh, they've got, that's okay. But they really don't know, because you secretly know you really don't know. You're kind of guessing almost all the time. Now, it's an educated guess. You're not going to say, I'm going to jump off the bridge, but you're also not knowing quite what to do. You're guessing. The really experienced people, or the people with an ego, or the people who are a bit of an ego, I guess is the best word I can come up with, say, well, I know what to do. I can do this. But most of us are saying, oh gosh, what do I do now? And you're making educated guesses, and the guesses have to come from facts. I'm thinking, for example, you had on your series Dr. Fauci. Imagine putting yourself in his position from the very beginning, when he's being denigrated, and he's looking at facts coming in that aren't whole facts. He's making decisions based on abbreviated facts. He makes the right decision, but it's the wrong decision, and he's saddled with it. Have masks, don't have masks, get masks. And he's saddled with that for 6 months. Oh, you told us to have masks, we didn't need masks. Or you should have told us to have masks, you told us not to have masks, now you have masks. He didn't know, he didn't have the facts. And now the facts began to come in, he began to change his opinion. Of course he would. And then he was denigrated for so long. He had to hold his opinion. He had to hold his calmness. He had to be within himself, Dr. Fauci. He had to have enough self-knowledge to know, I know what I'm talking about. And I know what I'm saying is the truth, and I will continue to say it. That's a huge example of leadership.
Yeah, we actually are doing a lot to support the CDC Foundation. They're doing so much good work around the world. And public health workers in general, I think, have gotten a hard time, but they're really working hard trying to keep people safe. So we try to support them as best we can.
Well, and as well you should. And it's my opinion that this pandemic that we're, in the United States at least, we're coming out of, is a rehearsal for the things that are coming our way. And we all know what those are. Building walls already in Miami to hold back the sea and all that kind of thing. That's happening down the road in our lifetime. Those major problems are going to work themselves out. We need to have the facts. We need to act. global warming is a fact of life. We're all going to have to deal with it, and it's going to be companies like yours that's going to help us make solutions.
Thank you. Yeah, we're at Everbridge. We're really focused on how can we use technology to bring people together to mitigate some of these really intractable issues that we're facing as a society.
What we need is a battle plan like they had with the atomic bomb. We need to, I don't know, get carbon dioxide out of the air. We need innovation. We need technology. We need to put this country behind the technology that will get us out. Technology got us here. Technology can get us out of here if the people will it. And it's up, I don't know who it's up to get the people to will it, but it's do or die. Absolute necessity.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that gets us to this concept of leadership. So let me ask you about that, because that, at the end of the day, we have the tools. How do we get the leadership to bring us there? And you've portrayed and written about legendary leaders throughout your career. Many people listening to this podcast are CEOs of multinational corporations, global leaders in government and healthcare. So I was interested to hear some of the lessons in leadership that you've observed in your lifetime, and particularly during times of crisis, such as what we've all been dealing with going through this global pandemic.
Right. Well, I know nothing. So I'm a little help in any specific. Well, I look at somebody like Jeff Bezos, who worked out of a garage, and then several years later has this incredible company. What made him think that he could do this thing that nobody else had done? Taking advantage of this new technology and working with this new technology and making decisions based on intuition. He had no facts. But somewhere buried in his brain was, well, let's do this for the first time. Let's deliver here. Let's make this bigger than that. I mean, those individuals, they are so assured that what they're going to do is the right thing to do, or at least their temerity of doing something is less than their concept of going forward. They're more forward looking than they are looking back. But surely they've got to look back and say, am I ruining my family? Am I ruining my life by making this decision that nobody else has done before because I think I can do it? What kind of an ego does that need? What kind of facts does that need to marshal? What kind of assistance does he have around him to say, if you do this, if you do that, maybe this, maybe that? And he has a group of people around him that can offer that individual man or woman the advice that he can make that decision. War leaders have had it all the time. That's the way war leaders work. They have people who are knowledgeable in many areas, but finally, as the president has said, the buck stops here. And that's the very unusual individual who has that kind of ego to say, yes, I think that's the way to go.
It's interesting. You touched on something there. And I've, in preparing for this and looking at your incredible career and seeing the success Jeff Bezos had as he's recently stepped down as CEO, and you look at people like Michael Jordan, who's won 6 championships, there's this concept called regression to the mean. And what that means is if you're below average, you kind of get pulled up to average. If you're above average, after you get satisfied at a certain point, you slow down, you go down to average. And I was curious if you've thought about what is that drive because there's been points, I'm sure, at your career, and you're as prolific today as you've ever been. You've got a new TV series. I watched your new movie. It's great. Your books, you're doing everything. It seems like that thing in Jeff Bezos, because he could have stopped halfway along and had a legendary career. And is there some magic there that
well, I don't know about Mr. Bezos. For myself, I'm told of an opportunity. For example, a gentleman, Stephen Smith, comes up to me and says, I'm working in artificial intelligence, and this is our idea. We photograph you for a morning or in my case for 5 days. We'll put 18 cameras around you, shoot you in 3D. We will ask you, in my case, 1,000 questions over 5 days. We will feed this to an artificial intelligence. We're going to call it story file. And we have the technology in which you can press a button on your computer and ask this 3D image of you, Bill Shatner, a question about yourself. What is the use of that technology? My mind leapt immediately to gravestones. Imagine being buried with, instead of a picture or a semi-permanent camera in your gravestone, you press a button, anybody coming to visit you after you're dead, and ask Daddy, what was it like when, and Daddy gives an answer to the people who have come to grieve, and they're there for who knows how long. A salesman, the best salesman in the world, records all this. And then you can ask that computer any question. And that salesman, whether it's a car, you're going to buy a car, you ask this car salesman questions. He is programmed as artificial intelligence to answer the question. I can't make a tour in Europe this coming year. We're going to film it and project it, and I will perform in 3D. I mean, the use of 3D and artificial intelligence is only limited by our imagination, and we're only beginning to come to grips with that. But that idea sang to me. I thought, my God, of course. I'm in the process of trying to stay with that level of that are business that are on the horizon of technology, on the horizon of the future. There's so many things coming down the road that are futuristic. I mean, everything needs to be done. Everything needs to be cleaned up. The air, the water, the people's minds, businesses, technology, 5D. I mean, there's so much burgeoning right now. I have been in a storm of depression about the coming events, which I mentioned earlier. I fear for my children and my grandchildren, the coming world. But I happened to interview a guy on my show, I don't understand, who his subject, and he teaches it, is how can you achieve happiness? And he was the most positive person I've ever heard of. There's less poverty in the world right now. There's more education. Technology is burgeoning. And he went through the list of things that the world is coming to that is so great. It's the first time I've heard somebody positive I don't think I've ever heard anybody that's positive. And I, like you, I laughed and I was filled with joy until I read the news. I got depressed again. But there is reason to be positive, and you just have to look at the facts rather than being scared by all these fearmongers who say the currency is dead and the country is dead, democracy is dead. It's not with leaders and people who marshal the facts, deal with the emergencies, and come out on top.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. The state of mind is hugely important. And AI is something we know a lot about. We use it to curate 25,000 data feeds so we can tell our customers when their situational awareness, if their people are their threats, if their supply chain are in danger, their operations. So we're constantly looking to leverage more and more AI and machine learning to get better at that. But I love the examples you gave, and I think you're right. Those are very they're going to be popular.
And then there's equal examples of poor decisions made. I've been asked quite a bit about Priceline. So Priceline hired me to be their spokesperson so many years ago, and we started doing amusing commercials. And it was like it was the .com era, and it was Priceline.com. And I was told, don't say Priceline, you say Priceline.com. It's like a whole name. So I'd say Priceline.com. and they said, all right, we're a young company. We don't have any money. And I said, all right, I'll tell you what, give me stock. I'd never done that before, but I thought, let's take a flyer on the stock. So they gave me a lot of stock. It was like worth 25 cents. And then we began the commercials, and this thing began. The dot-com companies went sky high, and the stock went to, I don't know, $175 or something like that. And I thought, I'm rich. I've got thousands. I'm rich. But there is, as you well know, what's the phrase where you can't sell the stock for a year
You're
and a
locked
half?
up.
There's a lockup. So I had a lockup. I had to wait a year and a half, during which time the dot-com explosion disappeared. I mean,
It became the dot bomb.
it bombed. .com bombed. So now my stock was worth 25 cents again. So somebody said, well, why don't you sell it? I might as well sell it. So I sold it. Whereupon my sagacity and my working with the company, the stock is now, what, $2,000 or something like that. And I don't have any.
Well, I was going to ask you about that, because that was a great example. If you think about it, it's almost a commodity type service, booking travel. And through the power of storytelling and the power of in my opinion, your personality, you really created differentiation about something that was maybe hard to differentiate. And along those lines, I wanted to congratulate you for receiving this 2015 Voice Arts Icon Award for Lifetime Achievement. And what that means is when people hear your voice anywhere in the world, they instantly know it's you. And that makes for an incredibly powerful brand. So one of the things, I guess, selfishly, we talked before about how Everbridge is going from a critical communications to now this new critical event management category leader. And we're trying to use storytelling to educate people about that and the importance of it. So I was interested in terms of any lessons you have in terms of the nature of how do you create an iconic brand that's globally recognizable, stands the test of time, either through companies you represented or just through your own brand over time? Any lessons you could share with us on that?
Well, I think that's very dangerous. I mean, for a company like Amazon, and they deliver, and that's their brand, and that's what they stick with. Although I know they're going off into space. There was some talk about me going up with Bezos on his Blue Origin. They're all trying to do all that stuff. Tesla and all. But for me as an individual, orienting yourself to one idea, one concept, like outer space or technology, I don't want to do that. I want to do other things. So I'm doing talk shows. I'm doing Comic Cons. I'm doing things like this, where I'm spreading myself around because it seems interesting. So my brand for me is, do I find that interesting? Does that appeal to me? Why would I come on something like your show where I know, where your speech, where I know I'm totally unqualified? All I'm doing is making decisions for myself. Do I find that interesting? Do I not find that interesting? And I'm wrong as many times as I'm right. Only you don't hear how I'm wrong. I've just told you about Priceline, who paid me very well, so I wasn't wrong about that. But the stock, had I waited months, had I knowledge, had I talked to you and you said, well, booking travel is big, I would have thought, well, maybe I won't sell it. But as far as I'm concerned, all .coms were bad, and I listened to. I didn't get the facts.
Yeah.
I did. So branding is a very a dangerous thing, I think, because you can be known for a brand, and that's great. But if you step outside the brand to look for new fields, you may be condemned, and they won't buy what you have because it's not part of your brand. So you have to be careful about branding yourself. I don't want to brand myself with being just futuristic. I want to brand myself with being searching for knowledge of all kinds. I'm in the quest in my latter days of life. I get a thrill out of acquiring knowledge. I get goosebumps when I take my phone and I start doing that thing, there's a name for it, where you get to a redlined word and then you hit the word and it takes you further, and you go zigzagging through knowledge, through the knowledge of humanity is put together for the last 100,000 years. It's incredible. I've just been doing, prior to us talking, I've just been doing the history of the world, how the planet evolved, the 4.5 billion years and the time it took to cool and the time. I mean, it's fascinating to acquire this knowledge. To acquire knowledge is in itself a brand. I mean, I love acquiring knowledge. Is that a brand? I don't know. But
Well,
but
it's
it
an
is
interesting,
dangerous.
fascinating answer, because you have been able to connect with so many different generations all around the world, and I think part of that is your ability to continue to learn and expand and go outside the boundaries, and it has been quite. I'm sure it's very fulfilling, and also quite a big part of probably your continued success.
Well, but why do we look for more knowledge? There's a subject for I don't understand. What value me in the years that I have on me to know the geologic terminology and where each geologic age came and went and what was going on. I'm not going to use that. I'm using it right now, but I'm only as an example of an itinerant search for knowledge. Of what value is that? And yet I'm thrilled by the acquisition of that knowledge.
No, that's great. Let me. I've got a few more I want to touch on before I lose you. One thing you worked on, which was actually groundbreaking at the time, and I remember watching it, and it's super relevant to what we're doing. So you hosted Rescue 911, which was the first reality-based television series. Actually ran for impressive 7 years. And I thought that series did a great job of serving as a teaching tool to many people. And a lot of times folks were credited that helped save viewers' lives from what they learned from it.
It saved thousands of lives.
Absolutely, yeah. And so, we have 2,000 customers that are first responders, and we actually have a set of solutions where we're trying to transform the whole 911 system to a next generation version. So it's something that we work on with the government.
That's a perfect match for your company, 911, and the whole crisis management there.
Yeah, and so I guess any thoughts? I mean, your experience in terms of the importance of.
Let me tell you a fascinating story about. Let me tell you a fascinating story about the 911. And this was one of the shows, and it's remained in my mind ever since. A couple with children are in a house. They're sleeping at night, and it's a stormy night outside, and they've got the heaters on. And the wife wakes up with a terrible headache. She says to her husband, "I got this terrible. Let's go. You got to take me to the hospital." So they bundle up and they leave the children in the house and they drive to the hospital. And now they're in the waiting room waiting. She's got this terrible headache, and the television set is on in the lobby. And the television set is on to Rescue 911. And on Rescue 911, they're talking about monoxide gas and the symptoms of monoxide gas. And the lady says, "That's my symptoms. The children are in the house." And they drive back and they save their children.
Oh my gosh.
On the information they got from 911.
Wow.
Incredible story, isn't it?
If you never did anything besides that, you should feel pretty good.
Exactly.
Do you ever hear from those folks? Are they ever?
No. They probably have forgotten it all, but I haven't, because in my mind I see her saying, "Wait a minute, that happened. That's what I've got. I've got this blinding headache. That's what carbon monoxide poisoning is. The children, Sam, the children." And they go back into the storm and drive through the storm and get the kids out into the fresh air.
That's fantastic. No, it's a great, that's a really great story. Thank you. You've talked about you're so active doing so many things. It's hard to keep up with it. I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about some of your other projects. My wife and I watched your new movie, Senior Moment. It's hilarious with Christopher Lloyd. We enjoyed it. I got credit for doing a rom-com. So now my wife's going to watch an action movie with me next time. But
that's the way I feel too. We have to deal with that.
Exactly. So I was curious, anything else? You talked about your new show. One thing you talked about earlier, you were talking about Shark Week. I don't know if you want to share some of anything you're working on in the future that you want to share with folks.
Well, I mean, I got a new album coming out that's going to be, I think, the best thing I've ever done, based on, and we wrote it. I have a friend of mine who's a great poet in New York City. he has a friend that he went to university with and grew up and was part of a musical band. So he introduced me to Dan. So Rob and Dan and I worked on an album, a personal album of events that happened to me that I would talk to Rob, the poet, about, and say, well, I when I left home, I had all my belongings in a little cheap car, the little Morris Minor that I had bought for $400, and I was on my way to Toronto, the New York of Canada, and I was crossing the bridge, probably over the St. Lawrence River, and an 18-wheeler was coming at me, and it almost shoved me over the side of the bridge. And I realized if I went over the side of the bridge and I drowned, everything I'd lived, that everything that was in the car and me would have disappeared. It would be like I'd never lived, but it didn't happen. And then I realized in a philosophical way that everybody crosses a bridge and everybody has an 18-wheeler coming at them. And we wrote a song called The Bridge. And there's 13 songs in the album of that ilk where personal things have happened. We've written a beautiful number. Great musicians have come aboard to help with tracks. And it's called Bill, if you will, and it'll be released in late August. It could be the best thing I've ever done, I think. I mean, but it's of certainly great interest. We've talked about Storyfile. The Shark Week thing was monumental. We dealt with fear. Fear in everything is a huge factor in your business. You have an emergency, and your first impulse is to panic and run. That's just the nature of human beings. I marvel. I played a policeman on television for several years, and I got to know policemen quite well. Policemen are human beings filled with the same faults and glories of all humankind. And in order to go into a building where a criminal is trying to kill you, I mean, what kind of courage does that take? What kind of a human being runs towards the emergency as against away from the emergency, as most of us will do? Because they have an element of training, but training only goes so far. That part of your brain, which is got to deal with emergency after emergency, and you realize that only by thinking, only by knowledge, only by training can you deal with emergencies like an individual policeman has to. That's the same thing as the CEO of a business that gets a hit. Don't panic. You've got to deal with facts. You've got to learn not to fear. When I went down with those sharks, 18-foot tiger sharks looking at me with mouths that big, I mean, I had to will myself to still my fear, and there was help there. But at any moment, 10 feet away, they're dartingly fast. It was an enormous experience doing Shark Week for me, which is on
that's
Monday.
Really the premise of we try to do is help people be prepared for the unexpected. And when you're in that crisis, have as much of that kind of pre-baked as possible, because when you're in the moment, it's hard to figure out exactly the right thing.
Impossible. Yeah. And in my show, I Don't Understand, I'm asking questions all the time. Tell me about this. Tell me what you mean. Well, I don't understand. I'm able to say, I sold the show in my ability to say, I don't understand. That means I really don't understand anything. So Bob Ballard, the great ocean scientist who discovered the Titanic, filmed the Titanic, the ship itself. I said to him, why would a world-class ocean scientist want to go take the time to go search for the Titanic? Why would you do that? I don't understand why you would do that. Watch the show and see the answer. It's fantastic. So I have a show that allows me to ask questions. What is panic? How do you deal with panic? What do you mean you train them? What do you train? How do you get the facts? So I'm able to minutely go through with you in your business to think, but I don't understand. How did you get into it? Do you panic? Why do you panic? What is panic? I'm able to ask those questions because I genuinely don't understand. And it's the most mundane things that we all take for granted. How does this work? How does it work? Do you understand how it works?
Not as well as I should.
No, you don't understand. You don't understand. If you don't understand how it works, you don't understand how it works.
Yeah.
Not as well as I should is a whatever the word is, an excuse for not understanding how it works. Because if you don't understand any of it, you don't understand any of it.
No, that's
what
right.
I mean? You may understand that the crystal vibrates, but what does that mean?
Yeah.
Why does it vibrate? Why does a crystal, when you take a sliver of crystal from here and you vibrate it here and it vibrates 1,000 miles over there instantaneously? Why? We don't know. Okay.
Well, I'm going to tune into your show for sure. And I hope you have an episode, at least one on the UFOs and the UAPs, because I'm kind of curious.
We do UFOs as well.
Okay, good.
I talked to the head of NASA about UFOs and what they think and what they...
Excellent.
So well, it's an interesting show.
Well, you've been very generous with your time, Mr. Shatner. In summation, I want to thank you again on behalf of society, humankind, all of your fans around the world for your prolific career that continues to have such a deep and lasting positive impact on our culture and society. And as we wrap up, any parting advice for any leaders in terms of just personal resilience or anything you want to leave with people? You've already left so much, so I feel like...
Ask questions. Just ask questions. Seek knowledge. That's why we're here, I believe. We're here to see the glory of the connection of the whole world.
That's great. A great note to end it on. Thank you again, Mr. Shatner. It's been a pleasure, true pleasure speaking with you today.
Thank you. Take care.